Thank you for everyone for attending. John actually took most of my stuff out because what John talked about, those tolerances and bits and pieces, is really where I'm going to go. So it's probably apt that I'm last because we're always the last barrier to you getting that occupancy permit. You've got to get past us. And just remember, this is as new to us as it is to you. So I suppose the first thing is the topic, building certifier's perspective. I'd probably prefix this by saying it's a building certifier's perspective, because in Queensland, we're all licensed individually. I can guarantee you that what I'm going to say here will be followed by my 20 certifiers that work for me, but it may not be what every certifier will require. But I hope it's going to give us a relatively good cross-section of what you should be expecting certifiers to be asking for, and at the end, again, what we'll be looking for. So I suppose I know there's a lot of people in here who understand what we are and what we do, but in essence, a building certifier, now we can be a building certifier in private practice or in local government, doesn't matter, we're all called building certifiers. And we are regulated by the Building Act and the building regs. And basically you'll see our function is there to assess whether proposed building work complies with an acceptable health and safety standards called up by the building legislation. We issue the approvals for building work. We carry out inspections of building work to see that it complies with any of the acts and the conditions on the approvals. We issue that final inspection certificate or certificate of occupancy that we have for classes other than Class 1 buildings. And we also have the power to take necessary action to ensure building work complies. It's one of the unpleasant side effects that we do have enforcement powers that we have to undertake. So when we come back to our role in the actual construction phase, the regulation, the Act requires us to inspect attached Class 1A dwellings at certain mandatory times. So the first one is at the excavation stage or prior to the slab being poured. That first inspection stage, the Act requires that only a building certifier can sign that stage. Now, 99.9% of builders that we work with use engineers to look at the structural aspects of those foundations. But the engineer cannot sign off the stage. A certifier must sign off that stage. And what a lot of engineers forget is that when they're doing those inspections, they are acting for the building certifier. They're giving us inspection help, which is defined in the regulations. They are a competent person acting for us. And a lot of engineers forget that. The next stage is the framing. Now, there's a little bit of a crossover here between what's in the Act and what's in our guidelines. So the Act says where there's bracing for a frame consists of cladding or lining, where the bracing is part of that, after the cladding or lining is fixed. Now, that's a bit of an issue because the inspection guidelines also ask us to look at tie down, member sizes, all these other things. So if we get to a frame and it's lined, we can't see anything. And particularly, this is going to become an issue as we look at these other things we need to do for the livable housing. And the last time we come to the site is at the completion of all those aspects. And we're looking for the building to be finished. And I'm going to talk about some of the issues we have with that. So let's look at design stage, approval stage. Before we give an approval to build, what we're going to need. We're going to need designers to be putting more information on plans. The plan quality in Queensland, I have to say, is abominable. I look at what we have to require in New South Wales, particularly now on Class 2 buildings in New South Wales, and some of the other jurisdictions that I work in, and internationally, the quality of plans that are required. I do a lot of work in the US and in New Zealand, and the plan quality there is ours just don't even come a patch on it. We're going to need to see more information on plans. So when we look about the step-free access, if you're going to apply for the concession, you can't just say, oh, well, it's greater than 1 in 14. That's not going to work. We're going to need the proof that that gradient exceeds 1 in 14, or you can't get the gradients for your ramps, your 9 metres for 1 in 14, your 15 metres for 1 in 20. We're going to need to see that to say that you can't do it. If you don't apply for the concession, we're still going to need that information anyway, because we're going to need to see, if you're using the pathway, we're going to need to see that path, the details, the locations, the widths, the gradients, because we're going to be using that document at the end to make sure you've met those gradients. If you're using the pertinent garage provisions, we're going to need that clearly identified. We're going to look to see that you've got that clear space that John mentions, it's clear space. We're going to look at the entry into the building. So this is more information we're going to need on those plans. Also, we start looking at the thresholds. Now, Debbie explained some of the issues she had trying to get into that building she designed. We're going to need to see those details, and particularly if it's the entrance, the method of weatherproofing. There's other provisions in the NCC that cover all this stuff that conflict, or not conflict, complement these that we have to look at. Door schedules. We're going to need to see your door schedule to make sure you've specified the correct doors. We're going to need to see those corridor widths. And as John mentioned, remember, finished surfaces. Plans today from designers dimension to the structural framing. If we see a 1 metre hallway on a plan, we're going to say your hallway is not wide enough. You must consider those structural finishes. The wall reinforcement, we need to know how you propose to do it. There's several options in providing that wall reinforcement. We're going to need to see what method you're going to use and what bathroom it's going to be in. The sanitary compartments, we're going to need to make sure that you've got the circulation spaces that are required in those compartments. For showers, we're going to need to see what entry detail you've decided to pick, because again, there are a number of options. Floor waste, we're going to need to see the location, the falls, whether you're using the QDC MP 4.5 requirements. Also comes into waterproofing as well. So now you've actually got your building approval. What happens through construction? So the first time we're probably back on the site is at frame stage. Remember, as a building certifier, we're not a clerk of works, we're not a supervisor. We don't come to the site every day. There are mandatory stages we have to come. I'd love to have more inspections. I make good money out of inspections. Builders don't seem to like to pay the extra bills for other inspections though. The legislation allows us to specify additional inspections if we want. The legislation also allows the owner to request additional inspections from the certifier. A lot of people aren't aware of that. So this might be the first time we're back on site. We're going to look at probably the step-free access, maybe ask the questions, have you considered it? If the building's lined, we're going to be asking a few questions. Right? And what we're seeing a lot on framing is, we're not doing the wall reinforcing till next week. We've got the guys coming back to do that. We're going to need to see that or get evidence of that wall reinforcing. Door widths and passage widths. Have linings been allowed for? Bathroom sizes. But are these a certifier's responsibility at this stage of the build? We don't know what wall linings you're going to put in there. We're there looking at aspects in our inspection guidelines. The inspection guidelines specify what we need to look at. At this stage, this is back on the builder, this workmanship. However, if you don't get it right here, it's going to be a problem when we get to the final. So here we are, we're coming to do the final inspection. Your access way, if the access way is part of the proposal, we're going to check the gradients. All my certifiers carry a digital level. We have in the past only used these for accessible facilities in class 2 to 9 buildings, but I've now issued these to all my residential inspectors because they're going to need them for the LHA. Step-free access, if it's ramp, the gradients, dimensions, the parking space size, is it clear? John mentioned, does it have a dirty grey hot water system sitting in it now? Weatherproofing, a big one for us. Outside the LHA stuff, but it's still a big problem for us, weatherproofing. How have we addressed that step-free entry? So we get to the entrance, the widths, the thresholds, the gradients and dimensions, the sill height, the 5 mil max. Max, 5 mil, not 6. 5 mil maximum. John said several times, the tolerance is 0. We do not have tolerances. Internal. All my inspectors carry digital measuring tape. You can't trust a metal tape. We use digital. Passage width, door clearance. We're going to put a digital measure on your passage width. If it's not 1 metre, it will not comply. Not 998, 1 metre. Sanitary compartments, dimensions, clearances. We looked at, and John mentioned a very good point about toilet roll holders and things like that. We will take a pragmatic approach to those elements because it's very similar to what we have in AS 1428. The showers, if we're using the step down, 5 mil max. That's it, it's maximum. If it's a linear drain, whether they have the deflectors as shown in the LHA or the livable housing stuff, the waterproofing, how's that been done? Because the waterproofing requirements has other elements that you have to include with water stops and the like. Floor wastes. Are your falls between 1 in 100 and 1 in 80? That's 1% and 1.25%, not 1.26. We have no tolerances. The regulations say between, well, you do have a tolerance, between 1 in 80 and 1 in 100. We do have a tolerance there. If you're using the weir, the floor height above the waist is minimum 10 millimetres, not 8. I don't want to be standing in court when there has been an overflow into the hallway for an insurance claim. I can't say to the judge, well, it was only 8. Surely that's not a problem. I'm still going to wear it because it's not 10. I'll have the builder very closely beside me trying to justify that as well. So again, falls not to exceed 1 in 80, maximum gradients of 1 and 1 in 8. So that's on the livable housing side. Yep. Getting there. Okay. So 2 minutes. That's all I got, 2 slides. So just back on the energy efficiency we looked this morning, really the changes for us on the fabric side is no real different to what a certifier is looking for now. Are your colours correct? We need evidence of that insulation. We need evidence of window compliance. We need evidence of lighting compliance. We need evidence of that fan compliance. Did you specify 900 mil fans or 1200 mil fans and we've got 900 mil fans? Those are the sorts of things we're going to look at. Whole of home creates another interesting one because now we're going to have to look at other elements. The evidence of heating and cooling, evidence the water heater is as per the approval, evidence the pool pumps are as specified, evidence the photovoltaics are as specified. The software inputs into the reports now look at appliances. gas, electric, induction. Now, we're not going to check to see if it's a Miele versus a Westinghouse, but we will need to know whether it's changed from electric to induction or to gas. The other problem we have here is, in a lot of cases, the appliances are not in the building we do final because they have a nasty habit of disappearing. And the builders like to put them in just before they hand over. So generally what we'll see will be a cable hanging out the wall and a cutout in a bench. So, as I said, we're going to need more information on the plans, and we're going to be checking those details on site. And currently, there is no tolerances. That's what we have to work with. Thank you.